Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film some reading reviews of the books that I completed in January that I have not yet talked about. So there are 6 of them, and I figured I'd just go through them in the order that I read them. So let's get started. The very first one is a romance novel by a Black author. This is Honey and Spice by Babalola, and I had gotten this book for Christmas a couple years ago, and I was interested in reading it. It's a contemporary romance, and it is based on a college campus in the United Kingdom. And it is Kiki and Malachi. So Kiki is like a podcaster, radio talk show host on campus, and she specifically, the purpose of her podcast is to uplift the Black women on campus and to sort of show them the way in terms of how to deal with men and with relationships and with empowerment and things like that. Malachi is the new student on campus, and he's a hottie, and he is cutting a swath through the ladies on the campus, and they have a run-in. She is determined that he's a player, and she's not going to let him basically play her. And of course, sparks ensue, and they have to embark upon a fake relationship. So this is a fake dating trope type of a story. And it was good. I enjoyed it to a point. What I will say is I am realizing that I don't enjoy contemporary romances with college age people in them. That is just not my preferred storyline. I have a hard time. For one thing, in this book, there's a lot of slang and type of conversation amongst the characters that I just felt completely lost in. I am too old, basically, to understand all of the nuance of what they were discussing. And I didn't understand the slang, and I wasn't interested in basically trying to figure it out. And so that didn't work for me. And also I just felt it just I'm too old to be reading about people in their late teens and early 20s having sexual relationships. It just makes me uncomfortable, and I just can't with that. So for those reasons, this book was not for me, but it was a good romance story. And so if those other things don't bother you, I would say give this one a try. It's from a different kind of a voice, and I enjoyed that part of it, and it really talks about the issues that young Black people face on college campuses, and I thought that was really great, a really great part of the story. I then completed a book that I started way back at the end of December, and that is my Best American Science and Nature Writing collection from 2024. And just like always, I really enjoyed this. Not every essay was a complete 5-star for me, but many of them were. This is edited by Bill McKibben, who I really enjoy his writing as well. And there's a lot of diversity of topics in here. A lot of them do deal with climate change, so just be aware of that. But there's, stuff about animals and stuff about plants and stuff about space. And so it sort of runs the gamut of all different types of science topics. And I really like the diversity of topics and the diversity of voices within these collections. I really enjoyed reading through this one. I then completed the Harpole Report by J.L. Carr. This is a book that I buddy read with Sean Breathes Books, and is a very slim little novella, and it is about a man in the United Kingdom. This book was first published in 1972. So this is about a man in, I would say, the 50s, who is tasked with being the interim headmaster at a public school and at public elementary school. And so he takes over the reins, and this is basically his logbook of everything that he experiences and all the different decisions that he makes, and the pushback that he gets from his colleagues, and the pushback that he gets from the higher-ups in the superintendent's office and the other administrative staff that run this school district. It is quite funny. It is quite insightful about bureaucracy and how bureaucracy works. But it's a humorous novel, and for me, the humor, it just kind of got old after a while. I just found myself, because it's nonstop sort of slapstick kind of humor, and after a while I just got tired of that. And I don't think that this is J.L. Carr's best novel by any means. His best novel is A Month in the Country, which is one of the best novels that I've ever read. And this one, I'm glad I read it. And it certainly shows the range of ability that J.L. Carr has to be able to write a book like this and a book like A Month in the Country, which could not, like, the two could not be any more different if they tried. And I do think that this is a really good takeoff on bureaucracies, and particularly the bureaucracy in educational department, and what the definite ridiculous things that you have to deal with. There's a lot of really fun characters from the community who also make it into his logbook. There's excerpts from letters back and forth from disgruntled parents and things like that. So it is funny and it is short. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, I would tell you to give this one a whirl. This book was a little bit hard to come by in the United States. I did pick this up on thrift books for a couple bucks, but my copy is real yellowed, and by the time I got done reading, pages were falling out because basically the glue in the binding had dried out and the pages just cracked and fell out. So yeah, it is a little bit difficult to find, but if you can get a copy of it somewhere for cheap, it's definitely worth a go. I then finished another buddy read. This one was The Power of Geography, 10 Maps That Revealed the Future of Our World by Tim Marshall. This is book number 4 in his Politics of Place group of nonfiction books. I read this on ebook from Everand, and I buddy read this with my friend Rachel, and I thought it was excellent. It was really, really good. It basically takes you through 10 different countries and the role that they are likely to play in global politics in the future. And in each chapter, Tim Marshall basically encapsulates a summary, gives you the context of the history of that country and where they are in the present day and how they got there. And he takes into account the geography of the nation and then the political context, the historical context of other nations and the impact that they've had on that place. Some of the countries that were discussed there was a chapter on Egypt, there was a chapter on Saudi Arabia, Iran, Australia, Spain, and then the last chapter is about space. And I just found it really excellent. I learned a lot. He does sprinkle in a little bit of humor to lighten the load a little bit because there's some heavy topics in there. There's a lot of things that I just did not know about these places. I thought that part was excellent. Just really, really informative and well written to the point where you don't feel like you're just receiving a recitation of like fact after fact after fact. It isn't like that at all. It's written in a very readable style. There's great maps in there. I definitely recommend looking at the maps. I would not recommend this for audiobook because I think it's important to look at the maps as you're reading the text. So if you had the ability to do like an audio text combo, I think that would be great. But the ebook is good if you have the ability on your device to zoom in on the maps, which I did. Really enjoyed that. So yeah, for sure, would recommend The Power of Geography. The next thing I finished was The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness by Jonathan Haidt. And I buddy read this with Britta Bowler. This is a nonfiction book that I purchased the hardcover of in January, and I have since lent that copy to my sister so she can read it, and I got a lot out of this book. It is not a perfect book by any means. It can be repetitive, and it is laid out very in a very basic format, almost reminded me of like a college lecture where, you're given the summary of the 3 points that this chapter will address, then you're giving the information, and then you're given a summary at the end to make sure that you don't forget the information that you've just been given. But I do think it was super informative. The information is provided is really important for all of us to get a grasp on, to understand, because it's impacting our population. It's impacting everyone. So basically, with the rise of smartphone technology and the internet, in particular in Generation Z, which who the people in that generation basically hit puberty around 2010. And that is when smartphones first became widely available to consumers. And it has changed how young people function in the world. You are all aware of this. Anybody that exists in the world today knows that young people act differently now than they did when my generation, which is Gen X or the baby boomers, or even the millennials, they are interested in different things. They interact differently than people used to. They have anxieties about things that are different from other generations. And a lot of this can be traced to the fact that they basically came of age with a smartphone in hand, with a device and a screen always available to them, always allowing them to be on the internet, and always allowing them to compare themselves with others. So social media has been very detrimental, particularly with young women. Video games and online videos, particularly pornography, very negatively impactful to young men. And we are starting to see how this technology is creating new ways of the brain operating in human bodies. And we all need to be cognizant of these facts, and we need to maybe change some things. And I don't think it's a maybe. We definitely should change some things about how we interact with these devices. And he has some really good advice and some suggestions for how we can address these issues. And in addition to the fact that screens are always available, and so we're always online and we're always connected, we've also taken away play-based childhood. So basically, after the 80s and into the 90s, parents became really anxious about letting their children out of their sight. And this overprotectiveness has led parents to not allow their children to play on their own independently. And that is really detrimental to kids as well. And so these two things going together, we're overprotecting children in the real world, and we aren't protecting them at all in the virtual world, has created the situation where mental health problems in young people have gotten to where they are today, which is very disturbing and something to really cause a lot of problems in our society. So this book really gives some hands-on and some realistic suggestions for how we might address that and to change things. It's not like nobody thinks smartphones are going away here. That's not what he's suggesting. Nobody thinks the internet is going away here. That's not what he's suggesting at all. But there are some concrete things that we can put into place to help protect our children. And I think we need to be thinking about those things. I will say, towards the end of the book, there are some chapters that I found less helpful than others. The first 3/4 of the book, I was really interested in. This is like the research-based part of it, where he's laying out the arguments for how we got to where we are. And then when he gets into the section where he's talking about paths we might take moving forward, there's a section where he talks about spirituality, and that was not for me. And some of his other suggestions might be a bit on the naive side. But I think particularly for people who work in the educational field, this book is really important. If you're a parent, this is really important. If you want to understand young people, this is really important. If you're a person who supervises young people in your job, this is really important. Like, I think everybody should be reading this book. It may not be the best thing that you've ever read in terms of the prose style, but as far as the information goes, it's very, very worthwhile. So I would recommend it for that reason. And then lastly, I finished my biography of Eleanor Roosevelt. This is Eleanor by David Michaelis, probably? David Michaelis, let's say that. And this was an excellent, excellent biography. I did a audio text combo with this one, so I listened to the audiobook, and then I also read sections of it, and I made sure that I looked through all the photographs in here, which document Eleanor Roosevelt's life. Eleanor Roosevelt, of course, as you know, is one of my heroes. I think she was a flawed individual, but she was also a person who kept growing and learning throughout her life. And her desire to make the world better for everyone was definitely in place. Even though she had some time periods in her life where she was very anti-Semitic and she was racist in her approaches, she did learn from those things and became less so through the course of her life and tried to make up for those deficiencies. And she did work really hard to make the world, and particularly the society in the United States, more equitable. She pushed her husband, Franklin Roosevelt, to address policies and issues that were social in nature that he didn't want to take on. He wanted to avoid in order to get the things done that he wanted to get done. He thought he had to appease a lot of the Southern Democrat bloc of voters that were very anti equality and very racist, and he wanted to appease those people in order to get his other policy positions passed into law. And she just held his feet to the fire all the time and made him deal with the stuff that he didn't want to deal with. And he would not have been nearly as progressive as he was had it not been for the fact that his wife was pushing him behind the scenes. And that led to them, they had a very tumultuous relationship. They hurt each other a great deal. They each had relationships outside the marriage, and it was very hurtful to each other. Franklin Roosevelt was not an easy man to live with by any means. He might have been a great politician and a great president, but he was not a great husband nor a great father. She also was a really wonderful social justice advocate, but she was not a fantastic mother. She was not a great wife. And so it really shows, this biography and the other biography I read about FDR, how people can be great in one part of their lives, but not so great in other parts of their lives. And I think we have to stop thinking that people can be perfect, because they cannot be perfect. And this book really lends a lot of insight into Eleanor Roosevelt as a person, and why she believed the things that she did, and why she pushed for change and pushed for social justice issues and more equality and human rights. She was instrumental in developing the Human Rights Initiative at the UN. She became a woman who led on the global stage in a time when that just wasn't what women did. She was a trendsetter and a path blazer, and she is somebody that I think we can look up to, particularly because she was willing to change herself in order to make things better for everyone. And she was just an amazing, amazing person. She really, really was. Despite her flaws, she was an amazing person. I love this. I thought this biography was excellently written, extremely readable. This is an excellent example of why I love biography so much. When you get one that's written like this, that tells a person's life story, this is not like a linear recitation of facts at all. This is the story of a person's life, and it was excellently told. So I love that one. So those are the 6 other books that I hadn't yet talked about that I read in the month of January. Let me know down below if there are any that you are particularly interested in this bunch, and if you read anything that you would particularly recommend in the month of January. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all soon.